course, some damage had been done by the cold of interplanetary space, but in general, everything was as they had left it. Stevens and Nadia were among the first permitted aboard. They went first to the control room, where Stevens found his bag still lying behind Breckenridge's desk, where he had thrown it when he first boarded the vessel. Then they made their way up to Nadia's stateroom, which they found in meticulous order and spotless in its cleanliness. There is neither dust nor dirt in space. Nadia glanced about the formal little room and laughed up at her husband. "Funny, isn't it, sweetheart, how little we know what to expect? Just think how surprised I would have been, when I left this room, if I had been told that I would have a husband before I got back to it." Breckenridge's first thought was for his precious triplex automatic chronometer, which he found, of course, way off, 6 3/10 seconds fast. Having corrected the timepiece from that of the Sirius, he immersed himself in the other delicate instruments of his department, and he was easy to find from that time on. Overcrowded as the Sirius already was, it was decided that the original complement of the Arcturus should occupy their former quarters aboard her during the return trip. To this end, corps of mechanics set to work upon the salvaged hulk. Heavy metalwork was no novelty to the Calistonian engineers and mechanics, and the Sirius also was well equipped with metalworking machines and men. Thus the prow was welded. Armored insulating air brakes were built along the stern, which was the plane of Hexan cleavage. Electrical connections were restored. And lastly, a set of the great Vorkulian wall screen generators, absorbers, and dissipators was installed, with sufficient accumulator capacity for their operation. Director Newton studied this installation in silence for some time, then went in search of Brandon. "I hadn't considered the possibility of being attacked again between here and Tellus, but there's always the chance," he admitted. "If you think that there is any danger, we will crowd them all into the Sirius. It will not be at all comfortable, but it will be better than having any more of us killed." "With that outfit, they'll be as safe as we will," the scientist assured him. "They can stand as much grief as we can. We'll do the fighting for the whole outfit from here, and anything we meet will have to take us before they can touch them. So they had better ride it there, where they'll have passengers' accommodations and be comfortable. As to danger, I don't know what to expect. They may all be gone, and they may not. We're going to expect trouble every meter of the way in, though, and be ready for it." Everything ready and thoroughly tested, and stream of power flowing into the Arcturus from the cosmic receptors of her sister ship, the passengers and their new possessions were moved into their former quarters. There was a brief ceremony of farewell. The doors of the airlocks were closed, the careful check-out was gone through, and the driving projectors of the Sirius lifted both great vessels up the shaft, slowly and easily. And after them, as long as they could be seen, stared the thousands of Calistonians who thronged the great shaft's floor. Many of the spectators were not, strictly speaking, Calistonians at all. They were really Europans, born and reared in that hidden city which was to have been the last stronghold of Callisto's civilization. In that throng were hundreds who had never before seen the light of the sun, nor any of the glories of the firmament, hundreds to whom that brief glimpse was a foretaste of the free and glorious life which was soon to be theirs. Up and up mounted that powerful tugboat of space with her heavy barge, falling smoothly upward at normal acceleration. Below her first Europa, then mighty Jupiter, became moons growing smaller and smaller. In their stateroom, Nadia's supple waist writhed in the curve of Stephen's arm as she turned and looked up at him with sparkling eyes. "Well, big fellow, how does it feel to be out of a job? Or are you going over there every day on a tractor beam to work, as Norman suggested?" "Not on your sweet young life," he exclaimed. "Norm thought he was kidding somebody, but it registered 0. It gives me the pip to loaf around when there's a lot of work to do, but this is entirely different. Nothing's driving us now, and a fellow's entitled to at least one honeymoon during his life. And what a honeymoon this is going to be, little spacehound of my heart! Nothing to do but love you all the way from here to Tellus. Whoopee!" "Oh, there's a couple of other things to do," she reminded him gaily. "You've got to smoke a lot of good cigarettes. I must eat a lot of Del Rey's chocolates. And we both really should catch up on eating fancy cooking. Speaking of eating, isn't that the second call for dinner?" "It is." And they went along the narrow hall toward the elevator. To these two, the long journey was to seem all too short. Long though the voyage was, it was uneventful. The occupants of the two vessels were in constant touch with each other by means of the communicators, and there was also much visiting back and forth in person. Stevens and Nadia came often to the Sirius, and were accompanied frequently by Verna Pickering, who claimed anew her ancient right of kicking around underfoot wherever Brandon and Westfall might chance to be, and at such times General Crowninshield was practically certain to appear. And upon days when the beautiful brunette did not appear, the Commandant generally found it necessary to inspect in person something in the Arcturus. Day after day passed, and even the new and ultra-powerful detector screens of the Sirius remained unresponsive and cold. Day after day, the plates before the doubled lookouts and observers remained blank. Power flowed smoothly and unfailingly into the cosmic receptors, and the products of conversion were discharged with equal smoothness and regularity from the 45 gigantic driving projectors. The tractor beam held its heavy burden easily, and the generators functioned perfectly. And finally, a planet began to loom up in the stern lookout plates. Verna, the irrepressible, was in the control room of the Sirius, quarreling adroitly with Brandon and deftly flirting with Crowninshield. Glancing into the control screen, she saw the planet in its end block, then studied the instruments briefly. "We're heading for Mars," she declared with conviction. "I thought it looked that way yesterday, but supposed it must be only apparent. A trick of piloting, or something about the orbit. I thought, of course, you were taking us back home, but you can't possibly get to tell us on any such course as this." "Sure not," Brandon replied easily. "Certainly it's Mars. Isn't that where the Arcturus started out for? Whoever said we were going to Tellus? Of course, if any of the passengers want to go right back, the IPC will undoubtedly furnish transportation gratis. But paste this in your hat, Verna. For future reference, when Spacehounds start out to go anywhere, they go there, even if they have to spend a year or so on minus time to do it." Closer and closer they approached the red planet, swinging around in a wide arc in order to make their course coincide exactly with the pilot ray of check station M14, which was now precisely in its scheduled location in space. At the chief pilot's desk in the control room of the Arcturus, Breckenridge checked in with the station, then calculated rapidly the instant of their touching the specially built bumper platforms of spring steel, hemp, and fiber which awaited them upon the Martian dock of the Interplanetary Corporation. Within range of the terminal, he plugged into it, waited until the tiny light flashed its green message of attention, and reported. "IPV Arcturus. Breckenridge, Chief Pilot. Trip number 4329. Checking in. 446 days, 15 hours, 11 minutes, 38 and 7/10 seconds minus." The end of Spacehounds of IPC by E. Doc Smith.